Right, let's get started. Now, Interior Minister Ambrose Derry is dismissing calls for a total lockdown of the country over the coronavirus, insisting the current plans put in place by government to protect Ghanaians are working. Now, he told the media outside Parliament House that he's not interested in jargon, adding the current measures are helping to stop unnecessary movement.
From a security standpoint, we've closed our airport, we've closed our borders, and you do know that those who came in are subjected to mandatory quarantine. And you are aware that tests are ongoing, and we've already come out to tell you that the tests conducted so far, 185, have found 25 persons positive. So we are doing all what is necessary. We are not interested in jargon, lockdown or lock up. Suffice it to say that the measures that have been put in place are meant to make sure that people restrict their movements and do not move if it's not necessary to move. And those are the things that are necessary for us to do. If you want to call it a lockdown, that's your matter. But I do not think that so far what we have done is what is necessary. And I believe that you would all agree with us that the president's measures he has put in place are not only necessary, but he's made sure that he's going along with the populace. And we call on all of you to support. These are not ordinary times, and these are times for us to bond together behind our leader to make sure that we do all that's necessary to protect the gas. We've locked them up. Yes, there are challenges. Yesterday they were arrested along the eastern border. 7 Nigerians, later on an American came in, and I still continue to get reports all over the borders. What we need to do is for all of us to assist the security agencies. We need information. All those who want to use illegal routes, unauthorized routes, give us the information, let us stop them. If they bring in the disease, even you who fail to inform us will not be safe. So all we ask for is increased support. The populace have been supportive. Give us the information and let's work together to secure our borders. Our neighbors have also taken steps to close their borders. But as far as we are concerned, it's left to us to work together to make sure that the borders are closed. And as far as that is concerned, the President is giving us all the support to be able to achieve.
And that was the Interior Minister Ambrose Derry speaking to journalists outside Parliament today. So let's speak to our parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Gakpo, who has a wrap of all of these events and related ones from Parliament. Joseph, if you can hear me, tell us what exactly was the mood of Ambrose Derry in the face of continuing pressure from some quarters for Ghana to institute more stringent restrictions in these times?
Essentially, his position is that the measures that government has rolled out are working for now. He doesn't want to be pushed into a conversation when it comes to jargons and words that should be used to describe what government is doing or what government intends to do. But he says that the systems, including what they've done at the airport by ensuring that those who are coming in afresh are quarantined, appears to be working. And for now, he would want a situation where members of the public are supporting government in the decisions that it's taking on the advice of experts in order to protect Ghanaians broadly. In fact, the demand for a lockdown is something that has come up from a number of minority members of parliament. Joseph Yilechire, who is a former Minister for Health and is currently the MP for Wa West, interacted with the media outside Parliament a while ago and made that point that he thinks time is running out for the country in terms of the need to ensure a complete lockdown for some weeks. He thinks that that is a decision that should have been taken as far back as several days ago, and that it's about time that those efforts are made. Not just him, but again, other minority MPs, including deputy ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, Alfred Okovandapoy, who is also the former mayor for Accra, he makes the point that with the fumigation that has been seen in markets across the country and all, those measures can actually be seen to have been working more effectively going forward if there's a complete lockdown of the country and people are encouraged more to stay home. But for the Interior Minister, Ambrose Derry, that is not something that is actually needed at this particular stage in the nation's lives, and that he thinks that the current measures are things that should be supported in order to keep the situation under control, and that when it comes to restricting entry into the country at the borders and all, government is taking the necessary measures to ensure that as well.
Did he have the opportunity to respond to the fact that this current quarantine of those who just arrived over the weekend has yielded such high numbers of positive cases? Has he had the opportunity to respond to the fact that some people believe that if these quarantine measures had been implemented earlier, we would have been able to stop even more positive cases coming into the country?
He makes the point that government is rolling out the processes and acting on the advice of experts as and when it becomes necessary to escalate whatever restrictions are being placed. Government will do that, and that's what government has been doing. For him, the time that these measures with the quarantining of those who are coming in from from outside the country actually came into force was actually the right time, and that the president took the right decision at the right time to have done that. And so he's not exactly convinced that if it had been done earlier or later, the results could have been different. But he says at the level of government, the security agencies and all the health officials and all are engaging in the necessary collaborations and having the right conversations, and that the president is taking very good advice on what should be done going forward, which is how come he thinks the said quarantining came in at the right time, and if there is the need for any other measures, they would come in at the appropriate time.
Did Mr. Derry talk about enforcement? We know that over the weekend there are some churches in the Volta region, for example. There was a church that was in full session, even though the police came there. That didn't stop them from continuing to worship. Then there's a pastor who's been arrested twice for the same offense. So what was the plan for enforcement of the president's directives going forward?
He makes the point that particular attention is being paid to the borders of the country, and he made reference to some arrests that have been made by particularly the immigration service. That was hugely his focus, making the point that they are encouraging members of the public who are seeing a situation where people would want to flout some of these directives to bring those issues to the attention of the police, the immigration, and the law enforcement agencies. He says that a medical doctor has actually been arrested for trying to get into the country using the borders at a time when there's a directive from the president and government generally that no one should get in. He said there are some people along the Togo border who have been involved in some of such acts, and he says that going forward, the security agencies are really on the alert, both at the border and across the country, and that the kind of support they will need from members of the public is adequate information so that then they would be able to act on it at the level of the security agencies.
Now, yesterday we heard about the 8 members of parliament that the speaker had asked to self-quarantine or go into mandatory quarantine. We were learning that one of them is Mr. Mahama Ayariga. What else do we know about those who have been asked to stay away?
That's correct. You recall that when the Speaker indicated that 10 MPs have so far been asked to self-quarantine, he refused to disclose the names of the said MPs. But even before that, the Majority Leader last week had disclosed that the MP for Ayawaso East, Nessa Mahamature, and the MP for Binduri, Dr. Robert Kwanlep, are the two individuals. Now we're learning that Mahama Yariga is one of them. And we've actually intercepted a communication that's gone to him from the Clerk of Parliament. And this is a letter to Mr. Ayariga dated the 20th of March 2020. And it comes under the heading, Notice on the Observance of Self-Isolation for the Purposes of Preventing the Spread of Coronavirus in Parliament. It's a 3-paragraph letter. Let me just run through it for you, Kojo. It says, and this is actually a letter from the Clerk of Parliament, the acting clerk, Cyril K.O. Intia, and it says, I'm instructed by Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, to inform you that in view of your recent return to Ghana from a foreign trip on the 12th of March 2020, and in conformity with the World Health Organization protocols aimed at preventing the spread of the coronavirus, you are required to observe the minimum 2-week period of self-isolation in your residence. Accordingly, in order to reduce physical contact with honorable members and staff of Parliament, you are humbly requested to keep away from the precincts of Parliament until after the 27th of March 2020. And the final paragraph says, Honorable Member, you are respectfully advised to consult Dr. Prince Pambo, the medical officer in charge of the Parliament Clinic, for a quick medical review prior to resumption of duty in Parliament House. And it says, please accept, Honorable Member, the assurances of the right speaker's highest esteem. So he's not being asked just to stay home for 14 days and come back subsequently, but additionally, he is being asked to ensure that he shows up at the Clinic of Parliament and take clearance from the medical director there before he gets back to the house. But, Kojo, the interesting bit is, you'd recall that last week we spoke to the Honorable Mahama Yariga right here on the show, on the Pulse, about the restriction, the imposition of restriction bill. So the point being that the Honorable Ayariga has been back in the jurisdiction for more than 10 days. He got back from where he had traveled to. He came to Parliament. He was in Parliament for a number of days. He interacted with a number of members of Parliament. He was on the floor. He interacted with the media. Before then, the directive came that he should self-quarantine. And looks like that's the case with a number of the MPs who have been returning from countries affected by this particular situation. And some of the commentary that's coming up is, looks like the Speaker's directive to the Honorable Ayariga and the other MPs, including Nessa Mahamature, the Binduri MP, and others, is coming in a little too late, because a lot of the MPs got back from their travels, interacted with members of Parliament before the directive went to them on the 20th of March 2020. We wait to see what eventually the full feedback will be by the time that the 14-day mandatory quarantine period comes
now,
to
I know you've put your phone away, so forgive me, but I'd love to see the date of that letter. Do you recall it? What was the date of the letter that was sent to Mr. Ayariga? Because I think it'll be interesting to see how many days after his return the letter was written. So
the date of that particular letter is the 20th of March 2020.
And he's been asked to stay away until the 20th.
He's been asked not to report to Parliament until after the 27th. So he's been asked to stay away until after the 27th of March 2020. And the letter is dated the 20th of March 2020. So the point is, it's supposed to be a 14-day self-isolation period.
But they're asking him to stay away for 7 days.
Around the 13th of March 2020. And he was in Parliament throughout that week until this letter got to him on the 20th of March. So he was in Parliament, he interacted with members of Parliament, with the journalists for like a week before eventually the letter got to him on the 20th of March alongside other members of Parliament for yet another period, indicating that he has to be away for yet another period. But the specific concerns when it comes to protecting MPs has actually come up again on the floor. In fact, a while ago, Joe Sewusu, who is the first Deputy Speaker who was presiding over sitting, expressed some form of discomfort over how come MPs are being asked to sit today until 6 p.m. So the House is currently on a break. They are expected to come back at 4 p.m. They've been dealing with the corporate insolvency bill, which is an item they've been dealing with for more than a month. Now, about an hour and a half ago, the majority leader, Osei Mensah-Bonsu, requested that the House takes a suspension and goes on a break and comes back at 4 p.m. The minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, expressed concern that in the light of the spread of the disease and the advice that there should be limited contact, MPs shouldn't be sitting for that long to be doing business. But the majority leader responded and said when they come back at 4, he will ensure that by 6 o'clock they will be done and that they will leave the chamber. But even as the House adjourned to allow for that, the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament made the point that in these times when limited contact is being encouraged, he thinks there's some form of discomfort in asking MPs to sit until 6 o'clock. But that decision was taken, and they've taken a break to return back, to actually return by 4, and they would sit until 6 o'clock. But the assurance is all other measures are being rolled out to ensure MPs are safe, apart from them sitting together for extended and very long hours.
Is there a quorum today, Joseph?
The number of MPs who were on the floor of the House, even as sitting proceeded, it's a figure that should be around 50, 60, not exactly up to the 80 plus that would really form a quorum for sitting to progress at any point in time. At a point in time in the course of the sitting, my counts show that the figures were in the region of 50, 60. No one raised it as an issue to then request that maybe sitting be suspended or anything of that sort. The minority side, including Muntaka Mubarak, who raised the issue yesterday, cooperated with the amendment and the debate and the conversation, even as the necessary processes continued.
Thanks once again for that comprehensive wrap-up of the day in Parliament. We appreciate it. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent. Meanwhile, in spite of the Interior Minister's dismissal of calls for a total lockdown, the director at the Noguchi Center for Medical Research says Ghanaians should be worried following the death of a second person because of the coronavirus. According to him, the development presents a clear challenge for the country in stopping further spread of the virus, which is wreaking havoc globally. In an exclusive interview with my colleague Elton John Broby, Professor Abraham Kwabena Annan proposed testing and lockdown of communities, adding the days to follow present clear danger for the country.
You should be worried, but remember one thing: health is not just a physical well-being, it is physical and psychological well-being. So much as we should be worried in the sense that we should identify that there is a challenge, and then we should then channel our energies and resources into using the methods, the approaches, the tools we have to be able to mitigate the challenge, to stop the spread of COVID. So really, we should not be afraid. As for fear, is an enemy. If anybody is afraid, it weakens all of us, especially if you were to get infected, diagnosed to be positive with COVID-19. The last thing you should do is to be afraid. You shouldn't be afraid because it can be managed, even though there is no treatment.
Next week is actually crucial for Ghana.
Yes.
Why is it so?
Yeah, this week and next week are extremely crucial because we need to take a very important decision. The decision is concerning whether to lock down or not to lock down. But you see, to lock down or not to lock down, it depends on so many factors. Some people are a bit hasty, thinking that we should lock down. But it's not that simple. You have to consider so many things. Don't you realize that countries like even the United States of America have even issued mitigation measures like we give every American $1,000, that kind of thing. Why is that being done? The point is that if we will lock down, there are so many social safety nets mechanisms we should consider. We should remember, for example, even water in Ghanaian communities. There are many households without running tap water. And if you lock down, if they don't have water, where will they go? They have to go fetch water or go get water from somewhere, or you will send water to them. If you use tanker services to send water, then you should be very careful. You don't call that the tanker is here, come and collect water. There will be no social distance, nobody going by social distancing, that kind of thing. So it is important for the system, the government policymakers to look at and do an analysis. That is why this week and next week, we need to be able to begin to take steps like doing some screening, some mass testing. That will give us a better understanding of what is the picture emerging. And some of the, fortunately, some of the rapid tests that are coming up, which we are in the process of evaluating now, can help to take a lot of very important, even game-changer decisions. For example, even simple tests like antibody detection tests, detecting IgM, IgG. These kind of tests, if you run it in a population, and the population is not exposed to COVID-19, you will get no positives. If you run it in a population and you begin to see that positive here, there, scattered, you can see a pattern. And therefore, based on that, we can even do an information, based lockdown, not necessarily everything boom at once. It can be done in a strategic manner, and then you can contain. Some communities may have to be cordoned off so that they are protected. Some will have to be cordoned out so that they are managed because there are positives there, things like that. So that's, I think, the scenario.
I think I'm before here, but let me ask a final question. You've done so many tests, including HIV and others. Would you say that COVID-19 is different from all you've done? Is it sophisticated, or it's just like any other test you've done?
The test itself is not so different or sophisticated, but the test result is complicated. The reason why I'm saying that is that this is a case where you have an infection that you may get somebody coming from even outside, which is a very high risk factor there. And then you test the person, immediately he arrives and he will be negative. You may be tempted to say, okay, he can go home. You are free. But it doesn't mean the person is free at all, because the person could have an infection which has not developed to a stage where you find it to be positive, that kind of thing. So when we get a result, we have to be even careful with the results. When you find a person like that negative, then the government is doing the right thing by saying that you still quarantine you for 14 days.
But is the virus becoming opportunistic, so the fact that we are hearing that those who died had other ailments, and yet they were tested positive for COVID-19? Will you say that the virus is becoming opportunistic to disease?
Not necessarily. The virus is causing more damage in people who are compromised. And here in this case, compromise does not mean just immunocompromise. Compromise means conditions like being diabetic or having hypertension or having some maybe infection already, some pneumonia-like kind of potential already. So such a person, and that is why the older people appear to be more at risk.
Yeah, well, as they say, the cure for panic is information, and we've got lots of it here for you on The Pulse. More of it coming up after these. Welcome back. Now, today there's been about a 100% jump in the number of coronavirus cases in Ghana. Health Minister Kwekwajiman Menu, at a news conference to update Ghanaians on the cases, said 25 new infections have been confirmed after lab testing of some 185 persons who were taken into quarantine, setting up the possibility of further increase in the numbers as more tests are conducted.
For the 185 test results received, we have 25 of those quarantined tested positive. If we add on to the earlier number of 27, it means we have 52 tested positive in our country at the moment. Those in quarantine, we have actually deployed psychologists to have chats with them. We have also in the process of handing them over to our case management teams we have set up. And they have started taking them to isolated centers for case management, meaning treatment. Definitely, not all of them will be critically ill, and they are not. Some might not be ill at all, but decisions on them will be on individual case management issue. If you are not even found to be ill, you still have to stay in quarantine for the mandatory 14 days. Earlier on, we were getting indications like if you test negative, we may release you after 4 days. But on advice, technical advice, and we've met all the doctors, we cannot do that. So we'll have to keep you for the entire 2 weeks, which is the 14 days. We have adequate room in Accra, various centers, to actually take care of all those that have been tested positive at the moment. But going forward, we have a team that is going around identifying places that we can set aside for isolation for case management, not only in Accra. What we have identified so far is that we can describe 2 areas in Ghana now as our own epicenters, Accra and Tema together, and Kumasi. We are doing what we describe as contact tracing. In Accra, we have deployed 98 field officers, epidemiologists, and community health officers that have been trained to be doing the tracing. And it looks like we are actually succeeding in getting to people. In Kumasi, we have deployed about 50 trained people who are also doing contact tracing. The advice I will give now, by this evidence, is the fact that wherever we are, all those of our brothers and sisters who have come in, we should advise them to put themselves in self-quarantine if we haven't tried them yet. And they should also be talking to the health authorities in the area where they live to send teams to observe them. They can be calling on telephone and be describing their conditions to the health officers they get in touch with, so that we can protect the rest of the population against community spread, that is the horizontal spread we are seeing in our country at the moment.
That's the Health Minister, Kweku Agyeman-Manu. Now, the head of our health desk, Fred Smith, was at this news conference. He joins me in the studio. Let's do a bit of analysis. Fred, good to see you. So the numbers, quite a few of them, what do they mean?
Well, Kojo, we've been putting together the numbers that were given to us today. And if we check the 185 people they said they've tested, out of those in quarantine, we've been told that 1,030 are in quarantine, then it means that we're having about 17.9% of that 185 that has been tested testing positive. So the 25 persons who've tested positive are about 17.9% of that. Now, it leaves us with something like 82.1% to deal with, and that means 13.5% of the 185 who were tested are positive. If so, the 13.1% of the total will bring us to something like 139 cases on the assumption that we get the same figures.
Yeah, same percentage.
Same percentage figures for that. Right. That will bring our cases to something like 139%, and then you add on the previous case, 25 that we had before. That will bring us to, say, like 160. Of course, we know 2 have already died. And so those are the numbers. It could shoot up quite significantly when everybody in quarantine has been tested. But of course, this is scientific work, and once that is done, we'll get the actual figures.
Yeah. So this is a sort of all things being equal calculation. We're looking at least all things being equal,
around 160 for our total.
Total.
Yes.
By the time we're done, and then you add 25 to that, and we're looking at 185.
No, after the 25, you'd have around 160.
About 160. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, let's certainly hope that the science gives us better news.
Yes.
Now, but beyond that, those in quarantine, there are some concerns about them. What seems to be the current issue?
Well, a lot of them are going on social media, calling friends in the media and other places, complaining. Some of them say they are not having food. Some have got food, they don't like the food. Some are there, they want something that they are not getting, one thing or the other. And we had at this news conference a representative from the National Security to explain what they've been given, the briefing they've given to these persons who have been taken into quarantine, and the kind of support that they're giving to them. And from what he said, any of these persons who is experiencing or having any challenge can reach out to the authorities so they can address them. We can hear from Obi Dixon, who spoke on behalf of the National Security.
Right.
Country. Now, pursuant to those directives, the Ministry of National Security, the National Security Council Secretariat, and also the Ghana Health Service put together a team that has been putting into motion an operation, codenamed Operation COVID Safety. And so, pursuant to putting across such an operation, a number of issues have actually cropped up with it, largely very successful in the manner in which it has been handled, and also fraught with some of the issues that the Honorable Minister has herein mentioned. But permit me first to just begin by giving you something that will be a roadmap or a chart that gives you some clarity as to the manner in which these quarantine procedures have been effectuated, particularly under the operation. And so this is how the walkthrough is, at least for those who seek to know how it actually unfolds. The first is that prior to arrival at KIA, the Kotoka International Airport, the pilot informs passengers of government-imposed mandatory quarantine. Subsequent to that, the immigration officials board the aircraft that come onto our tarmac or arrive in Ghana to confirm if passengers have been rightly informed. Now, if they have not, they pass on information to passengers before their disembarkation. 3, at the arrival hall, port health officials are the first in line to meet these arriving passengers and conduct medical screening of the entire passengers that alight. Point number 4. Passengers then move to complete their immigration formalities. Point 5. Whilst all this is going on, the airport announcements keep blaring and visiting repeated announcements of the need to observe social distances, just as we in this assembly here have observed some good social distance. Now, at that stage, the information on mandatory quarantine is again re-echoed to all passengers. Passengers move to the carousel thereafter to collect their luggage and wait until they are called to board their buses. The passengers return back through immigration, port health, and then drop their luggage in a conveyor belt that leads to a waiting truck. Passengers then proceed to a standby bus which takes them to the destination. Now, on board the bus, a designated official informs the passengers on the destination or the quarantine facility and takes questions from passengers. The exercise is sometimes done also at the destination hotel to avoid delays at the airport. You could imagine the number of arriving passengers that come.
Yeah, and once again, we keep hearing the use of quarantine instead of quarantine.
quarantine. It's actually quarantine.
That's correct.
If you check the, well, it's British and American pronunciations, still quarantine.
Yeah, that's how you say it, right. All right, then. Now, let's talk about the measures that the president announced. It's been a couple of weeks now since the president addressed the nation and announced some measures which have been escalated with the recent closure of our borders. But are these measures enough to stop the spread of this virus?
Yes, we heard about some arrests at some of our borders. Aflao, there have been some arrests. Our borders, our western border, Elubu, there have been some arrests. Our northern border, there have been some arrests as well. So we know that the officials or the security is on the ground and will do a good job on this. But there are some unscrupulous people who appear to be taking advantage of the fact that some of our security men can be, compromised, can be corrupted. So they try to do some of these things, and we've had reports of some persons who are arriving through Togo into Ghana and finding a way out of this situation to still enter Ghana, even though our borders have been shut. And at this news conference, we had the Deputy Comptroller General of the Immigration Service, Lord Ofori Afrifa, explaining the measures on the ground and the fact that Aflao is very crucial now because Ethiopia Airlines continues to fly into Togo, and therefore there will be some persons who may have plans of coming to Ghana and will definitely go through Togo and find their way through our land borders to enter. We can hear him.
On his passport revealed that he had flown in through USA. Ethiopia Airlines continues to fly to Lome. So we are watching that border post very closely, because that is where we are seeing the tendency of persons moving through. And significantly, this Ghanaian is a medical doctor. We expected him to know better. The other two are Ivorians. They all hired vehicles from the Aflao border and were moving to Accra. The drivers and the vehicles have also been arrested, and they are all being sent into mandatory quarantine. And thereafter, the issue of prosecution will be considered. From Elubu this morning, 21 persons have also been arrested attempting to enter illegally. 5 Ghanaians, 9 Beninois, 3 Nigerians, a Malian, and 3 Ivorians. They have been sent back, but the Ghanaians have been retained and are being sent into mandatory quarantine. From our northern borders, totally shut, there have been attempts by Nigerians and Burkinabes to travel out of the country in buses. They have been stopped. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, we want to send a word of caution to our border communities and the transporters. We are not in normal times. So the manner they've been operating in conspiring to smuggle people in and out of the country should cease. The border communities form a critical part of our border management strategy. We expect them at this time to cooperate with the security agencies. They should rather inform us of illegal entries rather than aiding them. When the coronavirus hits, it will hit them too, and it will start from them.
Right. Well, that was the Deputy Comptroller General of the Immigration Service, Mr. Lord Ofori Afrifa. Now, Fred, 1,030 people under mandatory quarantine. How has compliance been, with this quarantine so far?
Well, generally, they've complied, and government appears to be happy about that. But more importantly, the general population appears to have complied with the measures rolled out by President Akufo-Addo. Okay. And the Information Minister, Kojo Ponkroma, spoke at the news conference and said that, yes, we commend all Ghanaians for the role they've played in trying to comply with this, but there are some unscrupulous ones who are still bent on breaking this, and he wants all of these people to come together. He thinks that this, and indeed that's what it is, that this is a time when everybody must support a common agenda to fight a common enemy. We can hear him.
Out of our brief, because it is very critical. The decision was to close the borders and to put into mandatory quarantine those who were coming within that period, because it was becoming clear that our biggest risk was from importation. And just to go over those numbers, about 1,030 persons are currently mandatorily quarantined under the supervision of the National Security Secretariat, working in collaboration with the various agencies. Samples for 611 of them have been picked. Even as we speak, they are going through the process of picking those samples. We're told it takes about 25 to 30 minutes to complete the extraction of samples from one person, so it takes a while. They've done about 611, they are still doing it. The first 185 that have gone through the PCR testing, 25 of them, that's about 14%, 13.5 to 14%. And that shows that this vertical risk is quite severe, or was quite high, and that is why it has become necessary to take this measure. As the minister has mentioned, those who are positive are going to be moved to an isolation unit for treatment. The case managers, the clinicians, the Ghana Health Service, they are very much on top of that. And those who've tested negative, if you have 13 more days to go or 12 more days to go, depending on when you came in, that will also be managed. We acknowledge that it is uncomfortable, but it is something we need to do for the greater public good. All support services needed to assure the comfort and medical support of the persons in quarantine, even at this time, is being stepped up by the state. We strongly advise persons in quarantine to cooperate with the security and health officials enforcing the mandatory quarantine. It is in your own interest to do so. Even the mere interaction among yourselves puts you at severe risk. As uncomfortable as the situation may be, now is not the time to disregard the rules and attempt to disrupt the laid down protocols. Officials are doing their best to provide you with as much information and support as possible, but please cooperate with them so that you don't put yourselves and others at risk. We're also noting incidents of family members, etc., who sometimes want to come to these quarantine centers and want to find ways of getting in. It is in your own interest not to do so, because currently, even for the first cohort, about 14% of them have tested positive. It is in your own interest. Please cooperate with the protocols as have been outlined.
Well, you heard him, the Information Minister, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. Now, Fred, there was also an issue of logistics for the frontline, medical professionals. Has that been resolved?
Well, the Director General of Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Kumar, has also been addressing that. He says we've sent out a lot of PPEs, close to about 1,000 and more are being procured, and he mentions the fact that the workers who are in the front line, who are complaining, should just stay put. Their leaders will receive these PPEs and be handed to them, so that will be resolved. What was not discussed there, though, has to do with the ventilators we have in Ghana. That was not mentioned at all, and we'd like to hear from him. But let's hear him speak about the kind of logistics that they've deployed and what more we need.
One of the things we are doing, we advise all health workers and facility managers to ensure triaging at the outpatients, so that there's a pre-triaging where cases are selected to ensure that all respiratory cases are isolated and people are designated, people see them, so that we do not only protect staff but also protect other patients who have come to the outpatients for care. To do that, PPEs have been provided. Currently, we have done more than 10,000 PPEs distributed. We are going to ramp it up to about 50,000 within a short time. And when we talk about PPEs, there is a package of a set. There are some that are needed more. And so some of them, for example, we have over 3,000 coveralls, which is the one that you see covering people all over the place. You have the N95, which is a very highly, that fills out all kinds of, up to 5% of all debris and all viruses. But that's called an N95. We have more than 2,900 developed, distributed and more. With distributed goggles, we have face shields distributed, boots, among others, and we have more than 100,000 gloves of different shapes distributed. We are also ensuring that to build our capacity, all our staff who are currently on steady leave have been recalled back to come and join the force until the schools are open, so to keep our support. And we also know that retirees have been asked to come back, and doctors who are awaiting their financial clearance are also being recruited to participate in this exercise. The Ordinary Minister, the Minister of Health, has procured more beds to expand our capacity, beds and mattresses, to look at that. We also have the training response team are trained across the whole region, and all regions are doing downstream training, including ambulance service staff and other people. Regions have identified treatment sites, because this may not just happen in Accra and Kumasi, and so all regions have beds allocated that should we have a case, this is where we have. Currently, we have about 545 beds allocated across the country, and it's expected that more will be identified. And as we get into the situation we need more, the facilities will be asked to look at more. We may also look at other opportunities to create space to manage the cases. The treatment protocols has been asked. I can't take you through all that, but the most important thing, as happening all over the world, is the fact that when you have these conditions, please call. When you have cough, fever, etc., that has of respiratory nature, don't just get into a taxi and go. Just call the numbers there. Now the 112 is working. Somebody will get back to you and make sure they will direct you as to how you seek care. Either they come to you. So we don't want a situation where everybody's rushing to the facility, and the process of getting there, you are distributing the cases. Mr. Minister, that's all I want to add. Thank you very much. Yes, we've also distributed more than, you see, I would say 10,000 sanitizers, but what you know is that facilities and hospitals are procuring a lot on their own. We have also given the regions the opportunity to procure additional PPEs out of the funds that we have given to them to protect staff, so that they can identify specifically what their facility needs are as far as their service providers. Because let me add that when we say frontline staff, includes the security men, outpatients, records, pharmacists, everybody who will, I mentioned the pharmacists as well. Everybody who, by way, is part of the process of taking care of any patient who happen to be having a COVID-19. Thank you.
Patrick Kumar Abuaji, there's the Director General of the Ghana Health Service. Now, Fred, there was somebody at this press conference that I'm sure many parents were very glad to see. The Education Minister, Dr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh. He had updates on the closure of schools, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He talked about the programs they've put in place. You recall when the president announced the measures, he said that the Education Ministry should liaise with the communication and other ministries to roll out some programs so that students can continue to learn even though schools have been shut.
Yeah.
Now, those programs, right from the basic level to the university, tertiary level, have all been mapped out, and they will soon be rolled out. Students can go on the internet and take some lessons as have been planned for them. So that's good news. We are waiting for the day it starts.
All right. So actually, we can hear Dr. Opoku-Prempeh briefly. Let's check that out now.
In the subsequent address on the Sunday, the 15th of March, the President announced the closure of all universities, senior high schools, basic schools, both public and private, beginning on the Monday, the 16th of March. It had become necessary to close schools because schools had had their index case. One of our institutions had had an index case. And as we speak, students of that institutions are quarantined on the campus. In that announcement, we still gave room for final year SHS students to continue in school and final year junior high students to continue in school because their exams were around the corner. Subsequently, the President charged us to ensure online programs to facilitate education continuing. In that time, UNESCO got in touch with us and started a facilitation arrangement such that Ghana could participate in online and traditional media broadcast so that education continues. Because UNESCO had realized that there's going to be a break in education for some time all around the world. In the meantime, West Africa Exams Council, the one who conducts our exams on our behalf, also announced the suspension of exams. So we had to bring the final year students to school, back at home, meaning the WASI students or the SHS3 students and the BE students were all asked to go back home. I must emphasize that the school's closure is a total closure, both public and private schools. The school's closure is a total closure of all schools within the country called Ghana, both private and public. Any head of institution that attempts to keep students in school does so at his or her own risk.
Education Minister there, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh. Now, why don't we wrap up with you, Fred? And as always, you can give us a few tips, can't you, about how to stay safe?
How to stay safe. Wash your hands under running water. I think we should compose a song from that. Wash your hands under running water, and you do so with soap. Where there's no water, try and use hand sanitizer. Keep a distance from the other person that you're talking to. Try and practice social distancing. All of these things were said by, it's been said by every professional, and we are repeating it. We have to say it as many times as possible. Do all of these things and we'll all be fine.
And for the love of God, do not touch your face.
Yeah.
That's the tough one, but try hard, don't touch your face. Thank you so much. Fred Smith is the head of our health desk here at Joy News. In the meantime, some health staff of the Komfo Teaching Hospital are being screened and quarantined following their exposure to an 85-year-old man who died at the facility. The octogenarian tested positive for COVID-19 after his demise, and health personnel who were exposed to him are being screened. Erastus Asare Donko has been learning more about it.
We are learning of a second death out of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this is what we do know of this second death which happened here at the Komfo Teaching Hospital. This is an 85-year-old man who has a history of travel. We do understand that he came back from the United States about 3 months ago. What we do know is that he started experiencing breathlessness, and he has been rushed to some health facilities before he was referred to the Komfo Teaching Hospital. We are learning from our sources that at these facilities, some protocols, medical protocols, were breached with regards to how patients should be handled concerning the coronavirus pandemic. And so currently, as we speak, contact tracing is being done at the various health facilities. But then there are a number of doctors and nurses here at the Accident and Emergency Center who are also being put under quarantine due to their level of exposure to this particular patient we are talking about. It's not clear where they are being quarantined, but we are learning that some medical protocols could have been breached, and authorities are putting some doctors and health personnel who came into contact with this man in quarantine and observing them for the next 2 weeks. Now, we are also learning a worrying situation where some doctors and nurses and frontline health staff are also complaining that there are no PPEs at the moment. That's the personal protection equipment, gloves, masks, and other things to work with at the moment. It's been a source of worry, and they're asking the central government to come in with these supplies immediately to be able to protect frontline staff. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Kumasi.
Now, still in the Ashanti region, the Kumasi Technical University has extended support to its immediate community, Amakum, where it distributed hand sanitizers to residents to aid the prevention of coronavirus. A free supply of the commodity produced by the university's pharmacy department comes with flyers, posters, and other educational material on how to stay safe from the pandemic. Erastus Asaredonko again has more.
Kumasi Technical University has been closed down, but its pharmacy department has been busy. From the school's laboratory, they've been producing bottles of alcohol-based sanitizers. Head of production, Dr. Samuel Osei-Jabin, says the product is of high standards.
So we use the alcohol. We have two types, ethanol or isopropanol, and so far we've been using both of them. And normally it's a very high concentration, about 96, and it needs to be brought down to about 70%. The minimum that can kill the microbes, viruses, bacteria, and fungi should be 60% ethanol. So we have made ours 70%. And because alcohol dries so quickly, we add glycerin. So that the emollient effect will be felt on application. And then alcohol also has a kind of pungent smell. So we have added some herbal extracts and then essential oils to increase the fragrance. And some of the essential oils have anti-stress activity. Yeah, so we have added some of these things. And where we need to dilute, we use deionized water. We don't use tap water because that one contains ions and it can affect the production, the product.
Staff of the university stepped out on a mission to distribute the sanitizers to residents of Amakum and surrounding communities. Excited recipients were also taken through sensitization on how to stay safe from the coronavirus infection. Dr. Charles Obinsapon is in charge of public relations at the Kumasi Technical University.
In fact, we want to do this, first of all, to sensitize the people, to educate them, and then to re-emphasize the fact that what has visited us, the COVID-19 pandemic, is a real issue, and therefore people should take precaution, people should observe those directives and guidelines.
Some of the residents shared their excitement about having for free a commodity which has suddenly become scarce and expensive due to increased demand.
I have learned a lot this morning. The man spoke about the preventive tips, that I should wash my hands regularly under running water. He said that every 20 minutes it's helpful I do it. And then he also said I should sneeze or cough into a tissue and dispose it. So it's helpful. And in fact, the sanitizer is also very helpful. I'm going to use it very well.
I know it's beneficial to us because this is what they sold on this in the market to prevent us from getting that particular germs. Yeah, so I know that this one will help me to prevent me from getting that particular germs.
Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Kumasi.
And with that wrap from Kumasi, it's time for us to hear a little bit more from our partners who help us bring you the pulse every day. And when we return, we're taking it global. We'll find out what's happening on the world stage with COVID-19. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's do a quick whip around the world and get you some updates on COVID-19, starting with Africa, specifically South Africa, where the president announced tough measures, which include a lockdown. President Cyril Ramaphosa said the next few days are crucial in combating the spread of coronavirus. There are currently 402 cases in the country, which is a six-fold increase from just 8 days ago. The president said in a live televised address this, among other things.
We have learned a great deal from the experience of other countries. Those countries that have acted swiftly and dramatically have been far more effective in controlling the spread of the disease. As a consequence, the National Coronavirus Command Council has decided to enforce a nationwide lockdown for 21 days with effect from midnight on Thursday, the 26th of March. This is a decisive measure to save lives of South Africans from infection and save the lives of hundreds of thousands of our people. While this measure will have a considerable impact on people's livelihoods, on the life of our society and on our economy, the human cost of delaying this action would be far, far greater. The nationwide lockdown will be enacted in terms of the Disaster Management Act and will entail the following. From midnight on Thursday, 26th March, until midnight Thursday, the 16th of April, all South Africans will have to stay at home. The categories of people who will be exempted from this lockdown are the following: health workers in the public and private sectors, emergency personnel, those in security services such as the police, traffic officers, military medical personnel, soldiers, and other persons necessary for our response to the pandemic. It will also include those involved in the production, distribution, and supply of food and basic goods, essential banking services, the maintenance of power, water and telecommunication services, laboratory services, and the provision of medical and hygiene products.
Let's learn a little bit more about the situation in South Africa. Our colleague Mapito Sebidi is there. Joins us now via Skype. Mapito, it's rather a big announcement from your president, and his intention now is for the entire nation to be on full lockdown. How are people responding to this?
Okay, firstly, hi Kojo. I'd like to correct you. We are at 554 cases now. So from 402 when the president spoke, we recorded 153 new COVID-19 cases. So we're currently sitting on 554 cases. A lot of people were expecting this lockdown because the president was supposed to speak on Sunday, but he postponed it. And there were speculations that there'll be a lockdown. And then finally, the president announced a lockdown. There's been a lot of panic buying. Although the president did warn against this, there's been a lot of panic buying. And people are also worried about people who earn wages or, per hour or per day. How will they be able to panic buy? But the president has warned against this. And the health minister, Zweli Mkhize, said anyone who refuses to be isolated when they test positive for COVID-19 will have their names published to warn the public to not get close to that person. And if they ask you to go into quarantine, you need to go to quarantine. And if you don't, they will enforce it. We also have the military working with the health minister.
Yeah, so at the moment, is there any plan to provide any kind of economic support for people while the country is on lockdown?
All right, so the President Ramaphosa has announced economic plans to cushion South Africa against the impacts of the virus, including a solidarity fund geared at the support for those whose lives have been disrupted. And anyone can start contributing. Any South African, anyone actually can start contributing at www.solidarityfund.co.za. And we also have small businesses who will be affected that they can apply for some sort of a cushion or, to be exempted from certain interest and taxes. So you just have to apply, and then depending on what your business needs and how much funding your business needs, that's when they'll attend to you. So they'll make it a case-by-case type of situation.
Mapito, tell me about your own situation. How concerned are you about how things are evolving? Are you worried about catching coronavirus? What are you doing to stay safe?
What am I doing to stay safe? I'm listening to the president and I'm staying at home. We've got enough food, and if we have to go out and buy more food, we can go out. I mean, it's not like a total lockdown. If you want to go get essential supplies, then you can go out. But my situation, I'm okay. Our family is all right. We've got enough food. And we are just praying for this to get better. And we're playing our part in flattening the curve by staying at home, washing our hands, sanitizing, restricting our movements, really. Because, that's just about it. Restricting your movements, washing your hands, and flattening the curve.
It's going to be absolutely all right, Mapito. Thank you for speaking to us. We appreciate you. And that's our colleague, Mapitso Sebidi, speaking to us from South Africa, where the President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced a lockdown of the country. Now, let's look at the latest figures from around the world regarding coronavirus. At the moment, 400,450 live cases across the world. 17,451 people have lost their lives as a result of this virus. But 103,750 have recovered. That's a number that is going up as well. It's encouraging to see that. But what that means is that we have 279,249 live cases. The good news is that only 4% of that number have serious or critical symptoms. About 12,358 people around the world have serious or critical symptoms. Most of them, 266,891 of them, 96% of them, have mild or no symptoms at all. All right, now perhaps we can look at some of the countries specifically and see how they're doing. So many new deaths overnight, unfortunately, very sad, but let's see what it does to the big figures. China still has the most cases, 81,171, but they've only had 78 new cases, most of those from outside China. Total deaths, 3,277. Only 7 more lives have been lost over the past 24 hours. Italy still in second place with a rather shocking 63,927, inching up closer and closer to the China number. It's terrible. 6,077 of them, of course, have lost their lives. All right. So those are the highlights. We're going to take a break, though, right now, and we're back after these. Welcome back. Now today, the world is united in its quest to combat tuberculosis. It's World TB Day. The spotlight is on urgently accelerating the TB response to save lives and end suffering, building on high-level commitments by heads of states at the 2018 UN high-level meeting on TB. Joining me in the studio is Dr. Abraham Ejeza, specialist physician and clinical head of the chest clinic in Kolebu Teaching Hospital. Dr. J, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Talk to us first of all about why tuberculosis is still an important topic.
Tuberculosis is an important topic because tuberculosis has been and still, a thorn in the flesh of the world, because tuberculosis is affecting a lot of people. Right now we are worried about COVID-19. But when you look at the statistics, it means the effect of TB on X is far, far more than COVID-19 is having. And the good news is that TB can be detected and treated. I mean, looking at some of the statistics in our 30 million Ghana population, we have about 44,000 people getting TB every year, and we are losing about 15,000 people from TB. Every day, about 121 new TB cases developed, and then about 42 people die from TB.
Every single day?
Every single day. And even when you bring it down to an hour, about 5 people getting TB every day and 2 people dying from TB.
Every hour?
Every hour. This is quite, a terrible situation.
Yeah.
You see, right now, everybody is gathered together fighting against COVID. I mean, it's a good thing. I wish we are able to put the same effort in combating TB. We know TB has been with us for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Yet, still TB is being a problem to us, despite the few, successes that we have chalked over the years.
So what exactly happens in your body when you have TB? What is going on?
You see, TB can affect any part of the human body, but predominantly about 70 to 80% of the manifestation of the TB affects the respiratory system. And it has, very similar manifestation to this, our COVID. You get fever. The fever can be, low grade, medium grade, or high grade. And sometimes when we have people suffering from temperature, that people are treating malaria, typhoid, etc., and you are not getting, we call it a PUO, pyroxia of unknown origin. TB is a differential diagnosis that you must consider. And then you will have cough. However, with the cough, it's similar to COVID, but the cough of TB is productive, whereas this, our case, is non-productive. And then the phlegms can be whitish, can be creamish, but most importantly, you have what you call hemoptysis, blood-stained sputum. That's the phlegm that comes out. That's a very big difference between the COVID and then the TB. You will have other symptoms like night sweats. You have chest pain, especially with either cough or respiration. When you breathe in or you cough, you get chest pain. We call it pleuritic chest pain. And then you have excessive sweating at night, what we call night sweats, and then you have weight loss, because formerly we call it a wasting disease. Well, most people at the time that we didn't have treatment for TB, you realize that people normally tend to lose weight excessively, and they are on competition with HIV.
Wow.
So when you have people losing weight, one of the differential things you should consider should be TB. So
is it also caused by a virus?
No, this is caused by a bacteria.
Bacteria.
Yeah, what you call the TB bacillus, Mycobacterium tuberculosis.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so are there parts of the country where it's more prevalent than others?
TB is present practically everywhere in the country, and it is normally more prevalent in areas of low socio-economic standing, because of the fact that TB thrives well when people have low immunity. So if you have malnutrition, you have people who have liking for alcohol, people who don't have medical care, where you have problems of congestions, like in slums, in areas where people, sleep together in a very, one room, you have plenty people, poor aeration, etc., then TB is likely to thrive. Moreover, too, when you have conditions that can bring down immunity, like HIV, conditions that can bring immunity, like TB, cancers, and then people who are immunosuppressants, maybe they have a condition, for example, connective tissue disease, that medically you have to treat them with conditions that can bring down the immunity, then they are likely to get TB. Then another thing that we normally don't pay attention, people who drink alcohol a lot. Alcohol affects the liver, and liver is connected with the production of protein, and protein is practically the immune system.
Right.
So people who are alcoholics, heavy alcohol drinkers, also have high level of TB prevalence within them.
All right, we've only got a moment left. Let's use that to tell the world what we need to do to help keep down, or if not eradicate, TB.
the first and most important thing is what we are doing to raise the consciousness and awareness about TB, and that it is a treatable condition and that it is a contagious disease that we need to be able to prevent this transmission by making sure that we first and foremost find out people who are having the TB and treat them. Once you treat them, they will not be there to infect other people. So our healthcare system must have what you call a high sense of, suspicion for TB. And fourth thing is the TB manifests as a cough, because the respiratory form of TB is the predominant form, almost up to about 80%. So when you see somebody who is coughing more than 2 weeks, it should just raise the suspicion it could be TB. Not that it is TB by all means, but it should raise the suspicion so that the necessary steps are taken.
Right.
We have labs, especially chest TB lab, where you take a sputum, and we have high sensitive gadgets like GeneXpert, which can detect TB up to about 95% cases. Yes.
Right. Well, that's very important information. I think it's really good that we've taken the opportunity to
And
inform.
it is also free.
It's absolutely free to treat TB.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Dr. Abraham Ajay is a specialist physician and clinical head of the chest clinic at Kolebu, speaking to us on World TB Day. Now, listen, it's been a big show. We're so glad you were a part of it. We're back tomorrow with even more on the Power